Hey, Dr. Dahle. I'm interested in your thoughts on whether you think it's a good idea to avoid certain specialties because of predicted changes in the future job market. Recently, there's been a lot of discussion about EM in particular due to the job market report put out by ASAP that estimates a 9,000 surplus of EM physicians by 2030, citing the increase in non-physician providers and vast expansion of residencies. Do you think these predictions should be a sufficient reason to rule out certain specialties like EM, or do you think that's unreasonable?
All right, great question. I've been hearing a lot about this lately. That report by ASAP certainly got a lot of people in emergency medicine worried. It's interesting. I signed on to emergency medicine because I liked emergency medicine. I wasn't financially adept enough to even ask questions like this when I was in medical school. I think I knew about what emergency docs got paid, but that was about it. When I ran my numbers coming out of residency for, our financial plan, I think my assumption was that I would make $225,000 a year every year for the rest of my career. That's what emergency docs were getting paid then. By the time I came on as a partner in a private group, I was making significantly more than that. And emergency medicine turned out to have a better outcome than I expected it would have when I chose it in medical school or even when I was coming out of residency. So that was a nice surprise. It's always had a pretty good hourly rate, but due to the hours you work and so on and so forth, it stacks up about midway through the specialties as far as pay goes. But the opposite could have happened as well. It could have turned out to be not as good, not as lucrative as maybe I expected when I chose it. That has happened from time to time in various specialties. Radiology and cardiology, perhaps in particular, have had significant changes in reimbursement schemes over the years that have substantially decreased their income from what was perhaps expected by somebody coming out of training. There's going to be some ebbs and flows in any specialty and in medicine in general throughout your career. However, the likelihood, I think, of you having a terrible income in any specialty in medicine is pretty low, number one. Number two, the intra-specialty pay differences dwarf inter-specialty pay differences. I got an email this week from a pediatrician talking about how he makes over $1 million. Okay, he's not working any crazy number of hours either. He's just running a really, efficient practice and has built that practice and has done a number of other things in order to do that. And the point is, I know pediatricians making less than $100,000, and I know pediatricians making more than $1 million. And so your specialty choice is not nearly as much of a determinant on your income as you might think. Another point is that the most important financial aspect of choosing a specialty is doing something that you will want to do for a long time. You are far better off being a pediatrician for 30 years than you are being an anesthesiologist for 10, right? If you burn out of whatever you choose in 10 years, not only will you have paid a whole bunch of taxes over those 10 years, but you will not have the benefit of compound interest working on your savings for that time period. You're just better off spreading your income out over longer years. Financially speaking, it works out better. And so as a general rule, you want to pick what you love and will love to do for a long time. Now, if you love two specialties equally, and I think there's a few medical students in this scenario, but not nearly as many as second-year medical students worry there are, then sure, choose the one with the better lifestyle and the better pay, and the better outlook in the future. But the truth is, most of us get through our third year or the beginning of our fourth year, and there's really only one specialty we love. And I would not tell you to avoid that specialty because you're worried that PAs or NPs are going to have a larger role in that field in the future, or because the job market is becoming more saturated, or because there are fewer jobs in that particular specialty at any given time. I would not let that impact my specialty choice almost at all, quite honestly. If that scares a bunch of people out of EM, what happens? Well, fewer people apply to EM, then there's fewer emergency doctors, there's more job positions, et cetera, and things are okay. I think the fact that this article came out at a time when doctors took a big income hit last year kind of made people worry a lot. A lot of the residents coming out this year in emergency medicine are having trouble finding jobs. And the reason why is because groups aren't hiring. You know why? Because our volumes went down 40% last year. And maybe they're just now recovering. People were scared to come to the ER because of further strokes or their heart attacks or their traumas or whatever, because they were worried they were going to get COVID. It was not entirely logical, but it was amazing. We sat around in most ERs in the country last April and May twiddling our thumbs because people weren't coming into the ER. Now, most of that's recovered in my area, and I think in most areas as well. But it certainly affected a lot of places. They maybe cut the number of doctors on shift, and so they didn't need to hire. And so new residents are having a little bit of trouble finding spots this year. Places that are competitive, your Colorados and your Utahs and places like that are even more competitive than usual. But you know what? We hired 2 docs this year. It's not like there are no jobs at all. 2 of my partners retired because they got sick of dealing with COVID-related crap as well. And so there's 2 new spots for docs that we hired. It's not like those jobs are going away completely. In emergency medicine, there's also this reservoir of jobs out there that are filled by non-emergency medicine residency trained physicians. And as they retire, those spots become open. And most hospitals are trying to fill those spots with an emergency medicine residency trained doc. Those jobs don't tend to be in Salt Lake City and Denver and Portland and places like that. They tend to be more rural. They tend to be in perhaps less attractive climates. But those jobs provide a reservoir that I think will allow emergency physicians to continue to get jobs there. Now, there's another pressure on emergency medicine and its workforce, and that's contract management groups starting their own residencies. And so the number of emergency medicine residents coming out is substantially increased over what it was just 10 years ago. And so that puts some additional pressure on it as well. But I wouldn't let that keep me from choosing emergency medicine. If that's your love, it's a great specialty. It's a great life. It still pays very well. It's one of the best pay by hour worked of any specialty out there. And I'd choose it again. Even in today's environment, I'd choose it again. And so I would not let this fear of what might happen in the future or what is currently happening to a specialty keep you from choosing it. I would focus more on what type of medicine you love to practice. But sure, if you are choosing between emergency medicine and neurosurgery or whatever, that pays a whole bunch of money, plastic surgery, spine surgery, whatever, then sure, go choose that and enjoy that. But chances are, if you're like most of us, there's only one specialty that's really for you, and you'll figure out what it is your 3rd or 4th year of medical school and enjoy it. So I hope that helps. If you want your questions answered by the White Coat Investor, record your question at whitecoatinvestor.com/YQA or click the link in the description.
My dad, your host, Dr. Dahle, is a practicing emergency physician, blogger, author, and podcaster. He is not a licensed accountant, attorney, or financial advisor, so this podcast is for your entertainment and information only and should not be considered official, personalized financial advice.